I'll provide a brief update, but
Okay,
not since I was down there at like 7 o'clock last night. So we're just going to have to file insurance claims and figure it out from there. So
I was pinging with Sunny last night. I mean, they're just heartbroken. They had, I guess, just more or less finished all the remodeling too.
yes.
So
Yeah.
it was kind of the timing couldn't have been worse too.
Well, you could see the upstairs. I'd never been up in that building before, but it was all this great beadboard all over the walls, stained. It was just beautiful. And then, you know, unfortunately, a lot of that got destroyed. So, and all the new windows, I guess, had just been put in. So, so I'm not sure. They'll have to evaluate if it's structurally okay, and it may just be to, you know, insurance would cover cleaning up the second floor, but we just don't know. All right. Well, are we good starting the meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, February 14th. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Get this right. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. All right. Thank you. Real quick, just for my update this morning, I'm sure as the board knows, I sent out a note last night. We had an unfortunate fire at one of the buildings owned by the library. It wasn't in the main building itself, but it was at the Ichabod Scranton House, which is the smaller white building that had been moved to that location. And it's a historic building. And luckily no one was hurt. And from the story that I've been told is there was a child or a younger person coming out and commented to their mother that they saw flames. And that started a whole a succession of events that led to the fire. Madison Hose, North Madison, Guilford, and Clinton, I think, all responded to assist and put the fire out. So we're not sure about the long-term state of the building. That'll all kind of occur as we get the insurance adjusters and inspectors and things like that. But obviously our first responders did a great job putting it out. They were just completing their renovations at the time to start using that building for meeting space. So it's unfortunate. So we just hope that maybe it can still be salvaged and usable still. But it's an unfortunate occurrence. But hats off to the member of the community that alerted the library, and everybody did evacuate the library safely. So they handled that, I think, as best as one can expect in those situations, that under those circumstances. So so really that is kind of my update.
Smoke alarms were going off by any chance? You said you mentioned the child saw the flames. I would have thought there would have been a smoke alarm going off too.
Well, the building was not open for public. It was actually under renovation still. So I don't know what the requirements are in terms of smoke detectors, but they were still kind of under construction, so to speak. So it wasn't being used at that point. So so that's, and as I said, that's the story that I had heard. But there might be more to it. So as they investigate it and look into it further. So I think that's up for my update. I think we know we're in budget discussions. The board will be meeting on February 28th again, or no, February 23rd, our board to discuss the budget. We do have a meeting Wednesday prior to the Board of Finance meeting where the Board of Education will be presenting their budget to both boards. So that meeting will continue. That's scheduled for 6 o'clock. And then our workshop, I know, I sent around a note about this. Originally, we thought about getting together before the 6 o'clock, but I think it's just too compressed to try to do that conversation, then go to the Board of Ed presentation, then the Board of Finance has a meeting. So we'll just keep to our schedule of our next scheduled workshop, which is, I think, the 23rd. I had it in my email, was it the 23rd? Whatever was in my email. Yeah, 23rd. So 23rd. Yeah. Okay, good. So with that, I guess moving on to liaison reports and selectmen comments.
real quick on, I attended the Madison Youth and Family Services meeting on the 7th. And, the student report was it's always the highlight of the meeting, of course, when they give us a sense of what's going on inside the schools and kind of the tone and culture and all that kind of stuff. But you guys may have heard about the TEDx that's coming on 3/10. And at this point, they have 21 speakers already lined up for the TEDx at the school, including 4 high school students. So pretty exciting stuff. Yeah, they were pumped. Revi was the student who kind of gave the update on it, and you can just sense the excitement and the pride of the school as they prepare for this. So pretty exciting. And then they talked a little bit about some of the clinicians came in and talked a little bit about the caseload that they're seeing and have seen and watching things rise from COVID onward, and the different types of caseloads that Madison Youth and Family Services does service. Specifically 10 and under, that group has risen rather dramatically. So just a point on that as well, and how much of an integration and integral point they work with Madison Public Schools as well. Several of the counselors actually play a dual role as in school counseling, and then do some things outside, which was an interesting coordination point. So that's it. End of report.
Right.
Oh, and the parent support counselor was hired, by the way, is what I was told. So, which was.
Yeah, I think we voted on that at the last meeting. So
Yep.
that was part of, yep. So that was part of that agenda. Any, Bruce, you look like you had an update.
Yep. So I've got 2. First, I'd like to include in the record of this meeting a letter that was hand delivered to the Selectmen's office from folks regarding short-term rentals. It is a package of correspondence going back as far as 2021, and then more recently some letters from this year. They're requesting, and by way of this update, I'm asking for those documents with multiple signatories to be included in the public record.
Okay, so that we will, I think those were getting scanned in, or they already are scanned in, and then they'll be attached as under citizens' comments for the record.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay, we're going to be talking about this a little bit later on, but the Beach and Rec has identified a new playscape for the surf club, and are hoping that with a positive vote today, which I can't imagine how we wouldn't, they'll be moving forward, and I believe in time for the summer season, have a new playground in place. And this one will be specifically designed for the salt air environment, with a schedule to maintain its components that are subject to corrosion. So keep the equipment in good shape for a long period of time. The repairs to the seawall that were damaged in December have been completed and seem to be in good shape, and put us back in place and ready for the spring season. I think probably there's still a bigger discussion to have around how we're going to manage the surf club in the long run, but the immediate problems look to have been taken care of.
Okay, great. Al?
2 quick academy updates. Our building committee is chomping at the bit to get started with the architect, and our agenda this morning, we will be voting to move that forward, and hopefully the contract will be signed this week, and the building committee will be full speed ahead. Our design committee, at our last meeting, our advisory committee reported to us on the results of the survey of Madison residents. More than 2,000 responded to that. The advisory committee is continuing onward now, gathering information from various focus groups as to what kind of programming and outfitting they would like to see in the building. Those focus groups include the performing arts, studio arts, and I don't know what the right term is, culinary arts. And so they will have that feedback from focus groups to share with the building committee over the next 8 weeks or so. So it's full speed ahead for both committees at this point.
Great. And I know Jen, do you have any updates? I know Jen has kind of inherited, Noreen's previous liaison assignments, and we'll talk a little bit later if we're going to shift those around. But have you attended any meetings at this point?
I did. I attended
Okay.
Virtually the planning and zoning meeting that took place on February 2nd. And the major thing with that meeting was a discussion on the plan of conservation and development. They're working on that document. And right now they're just in the beginning stages of discussions on the introduction section of the document.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Nice
Okay.
to hear that going, though. That's great.
Yeah, and actually maybe a brief update on the strategic planning working group, just for the board. We actually received 7 requests for proposals from consultants. So we'll be hopefully coming to you in March with a recommendation to move forward with the consultant on that project. So that was kind of exciting to get that level of interest in doing the town's strategic plan. So if no more board member comments, we'll move on to citizens' comments. And Jean is Jacqueline today. And just so the public is aware that my assistant had a wonderful, beautiful baby boy a couple weeks ago. So she's home resting and having time with her new baby. And Jean Stevens is subbing in for her. So don't see any hands raised for public comment at this point. And obviously if there's an opportunity at the end of the meeting to add that. So with that, I'd actually like to make a motion to amend, and I sent the board around this information, amend the consent agenda to add item number 5 to include letter C, which is approve calling a public hearing on Tuesday, February 28th, 2023 at 7 p.m. in the Hammond Asset Room at Madison Town Campus, 8 Campus Drive, and on Zoom for the purpose of a budget presentation by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education conducted by the Board of Finance in accordance with the Town Charter 10.4 A, 10.4A. So I'd like, okay.
Second.
Okay, great. And this is just an item, it's a housekeeping item. We always have to call these public hearings, and we forgot to put it in for the agenda that went out to you guys on Friday. So all in favor of amending the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, passes unanimously. Now I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the amendments as written.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Nope. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, great. Thank you. Item number 6. I'd like to invite up our Tom Hansen and our health director and Weston and Sampson, who is advising the town on our townwide wastewater facilities plan. This is something that has been needed to be done for many years, and we're excited to see this process moving forward. And so they want to give us an update on where they are with the study that's being conducted. So with that, I will turn it over to let's see, we've got 2 people from Weston and Sampson. Trent, we'll give everybody a moment to
Anybody
join.
else?
Tom Hansen there.
Is Tom Hansen there? Let's see.
Yes,
Trent, is Tom also joining us?
Yeah, she's moving.
I
along.
believe.
I believe Tom GH. I'm trying to.
Okay. Yep.
There we go.
Trent, I saw you talking. We can't hear you.
No. Always these difficulties. So I want to welcome Weston and Sampson. They're our advisors on this project. They'll be conducting the study, and they've been in the thick of it, so to speak, already. And then Tom Hansen, who is, Tom, will you be showing your face with us, or you're going to be?
Sure. How do I do that? I thought it would do it.
There's a little video button at the bottom,
Oh,
Tom.
start video. Yes. Okay. Got it.
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
you're good.
Perfect.
Oh,
Okay,
that's
great.
much better, isn't it?
All right.
Actually,
Yeah.
actually, turn your video off, Tom.
Sorry, Scott, you can't unsee that now.
Tom is the chair of our wastewater, I forget the name of your solid waste disposal commission or something. I can't remember. No, that's a different one. I forget the name of your commission. I apologize. But if you want to introduce yourself and the team, and along with Trent, and then we turn it over to you for an update.
Sure, absolutely. Good morning. And thanks to Matt Germain and John Rugo, who are here from Weston and Sampson. They're our consultant on this project, and they've been working with the Water Pollution Control Authority. That's what we are, and Trent and his office. The first thing that we asked Weston and Sampson to do was to look at the town overall, physical attributes of the town and conditions, and sort of put together an analysis of septic system performance in very general terms in the town, and identify where septic system performance may be somewhat limited based on soil conditions, groundwater, things like that. It's not a lot by lot or an area by area assessment, but it's a general overview of the town. So we've asked them to do that, and they have done that. And they'll talk a little bit about what that assignment was for them, and then a little bit about what the future holds, which is for us to work more closely with the health office and with the residents in those areas to see if their experience coincides and is congruent with the analytical data, the empirical data. And once we've established that, to determine if we need to look at alternative management techniques for septic systems in those areas or anywhere else in the town. Don't forget, this study is funded by the DEEP, and it meets the requirement of the state statute that the town of Madison be responsible for all the wastewater generated in the town, which we manage that very well through the health office and application of the public health code. And as you know, there's no sewers in town. It's all on-site septic systems, and growth in certain areas, and physical constraints for sizing on lots, and groundwater conditions, et cetera, all kind of enter into Trent's analysis every time he has to approve a new septic system. So ultimately, the study will try to define if changes are needed to the town's plan, and what tools could be made available to Trent for improving wastewater disposal in the town. So I'm available for any questions, but if I may, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Germain, who's been working with us on this, and maybe Trent first. Maybe Trent would like to say a few words before we begin. Go ahead, Trent.
No, I would like Matt and John to take over. Just wanted to clarify that a lot of what we enforce at the health department is the technical standards of subsurface sewage disposal systems in Connecticut. However, we are a little bit more conservative in Madison over the past 6.5 years. For any tidal influenced property, we are a little bit more conservative, just because of what we know about nitrogen, and obviously just for the longevity of septic systems along the coast. So that in turn would influence this study or whatever recommendations comes from the study. I think if it were like local ordinance or additional efforts policy wise, we kind of already there. But later I'll turn it over to Matt and John.
Thank you. Let's see here. John, do you want to put the presentation up?
Yep. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
That's pretty good. So we're following a standard process that the state DEP goes through with these facility plans. So I don't want to say the word alarmed, but feel free to ask questions along the way. But what we need to do is kind of look at the entire community for issues or opportunities to improve wastewater disposal based on the current thinking at the state DEP level, which is a little different than the state health department level. Whereas the state health department level has their current regulations for how you site a septic system. DEP looks a little more long range to also include what are the impacts to different things such as our more extreme weather events towards discharge of nitrogen into Long Island Sound. How are things sustainable long term? Are we really following the most cost effective way for wastewater disposal for the residents? Those are so there's a lot of similarities with Department of Public Health and DEP, and kind of keep that in mind as John goes through this presentation. We try to scale it back quite a bit, but there's an awful lot of detail that goes into the work that we did. Go ahead, John. Why don't you get started?
Right. Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having us to provide you with an update on the wastewater facilities plan. This morning's presentation will cover the identified areas of concern in town. We're going to touch on existing conditions within them, how those might affect or impact septic systems. We'll cover a few of the conditions that were found to be more common. And then finally, we'll talk about the next steps as the year progresses. To date, Weston and Sampson has completed the initial data gathering and review of existing conditions within the town that Tom was talking about. Based upon this preliminary analysis, areas of concern have been identified as seen here on this map. Those areas of concern include the Circle Beach area, Garnet Park Road, Neck Road area, Arbor Lane area, Cottage Road and Dudge Village, Middle and East Wharf Beaches, and also the Seaview Beach area.
Let me jump in real quick here. So you know, you go to what Tom just said and say, hey, we're not zeroing in on particular parcels or neighborhood areas, and then we pop up this slide and said, what's that? And what we need to do is we need to try to group different areas of town, so then we can look at different characteristics for septic system. There might be local conditions that might cause issues with wastewater treatment or make it more difficult or more expensive to put septic systems on the site. So what we did is we looked through the whole town, and generally areas that are most unique in Madison are these areas, and we try to divide these areas into different groupings based on similar characteristics that make each of them so unique. And if we move on, we'll get into a little bit about it. Go ahead, John.
Yep, it's a good segue into our next slide. So focusing on those areas of concern and utilizing the information that we pulled from a variety of town and external resources, we've assembled this septic compatibility table that's giving a snapshot of what characteristics could pose a challenge to system construction and reliability. These include things such as soil conditions, ground and surface water information, as well as environmentally sensitive area considerations, among the other ones that you see listed across the top row. Unfavorable in red, marginal in yellow, and favorable conditions in green have been assigned a score that was then applied across each category within the areas of concern, and then those totals were summed with a higher score being better.
Yeah,
It's
and-
important to note here that the application of the current public health code by Trenton, the town's health department, is meeting these challenges. This is just a review meant to be a first step in better understanding if alternatives might be required in the future.
So looking at this chart, what it helps us do is say, hey, there are a couple of areas with some unique conditions that maybe we should sit down with Trent, the public, public health department, with the Water Pollution Control Authority, with Tom and his group, and even you guys also, but then also reach out to the public and hear their input and what their experiences are to say, maybe some of these areas are struggling a little bit or have some future challenges as the weather gets more extreme. And maybe we can look at that more closely to try to figure out if there's ways to help make those systems work better to meet long-term state goals. And you can see in this chart, sort of rather readily, it's easier to see, okay, the top couple on the list might be something we might want to look into more detail together, not just Weston Sampson. This is a team effort here.
Yep.
If I can join in just for a second, John.
Yep.
And maybe you were going to do this. Maybe you could walk us across this table from A to N, explain what each of these ranking criteria are and how they're important to us at this stage of the study.
We do have, we'll touch upon in a few slides later on what each of these categories means. We kind of have broken it down into how each will impact a septic system.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
Yep, absolutely. So from those categories, several stood out as being commonly repeated within the areas of concern. One such category was the lot sizes, with each area of concern having a mix of them. As seen here, smaller lot sizes are more prevalent close to the shoreline. You'll also note that Dudds Village and Cottage Road areas are shown as larger parcels. However, those areas do feature smaller, denser lots. Here you have the storm surge inundation from different category hurricanes. While the shoreline is susceptible, larger category storms can still have an impact on those areas of concern that are a little further inland. And lastly, we have the soil drainage classification. A variety of classifications are seen within the areas of concern. However, excessively or poorly drained tend to be the most prevalent. Poor drainage characteristics may limit a leaching system's effectiveness.
And so we showed you 3 maps. We didn't want to consume the next 3 hours of your life by showing you maps on each one of these characteristics, but quite a bit of work went into looking at a lot of studies that have been done in the past for the town, for the state, to boil it down into that really easy to understand table.
Yep. So as Tom mentioned, and kind of going back to both the table and the maps, here you see potential impacts that each category may have on septic system performance. This slide has the soil and physical existing condition potential impacts summarized. As seen previously, leaching system effectiveness may be limited by poor draining soils, and smaller lot sizes may not have enough room for a code compliant septic system. On this slide, we have the potential impacts from ground and surface water conditions summarized. You have your groundwater, surface water, aquifer protection zones, which are only a small area on the eastern side of town, as well as the impact of a public water system. And then lastly, you have the potential impacts from existing environmental conditions listed here. As you saw earlier on the storm surge map, septic systems should be designed to endure a hurricane inundation.
Yeah, and the last slide here has the most diverse group of ratings, where we're trying to make sure that the effluent that's discharged out of the leaching field of these septic systems, it basically enters the ecosystem. Parts of the ecosystem, they're all important, but if you go into a saltwater marsh, they're more sensitive to nitrogen discharge than perhaps just the Long Island Sound shoreline. They're all important. But then we also look at, say, like, what systems are in flood prone areas, which areas are susceptible for hurricane storm surge, because the last thing you want to do is spend money for really robust septic systems along the shoreline, and then it gets destroyed by the next hurricane. So we have to kind of consider those thoughts. And then the last one is, if a resident is upgrading their septic system, we want to make sure that it's going to be a long-term solution that will last the next 20, 30 or more years, because these things aren't just upgraded and repaired like every day. You make an upgrade and then you try not to think about it for the next 30 or 40 years. So we want to consider if there's any sea level rise concerns for some of the areas in low-lying areas, low-lying places along the shoreline, but some of the shoreline areas are pretty elevated, and those aren't concerns, and we're looking at all of that.
Mhm. And then that brings us to the next steps for the plan, which will be to review the septic system records in the low scoring areas of concern, as well as evaluation of alternatives. With that, we will have a public communication to give residents a chance to provide their input. We'll have a draft interim report provided to the WPCA for review and comment, and we'll be working on the nitrogen loading analysis that was alluded to previously. For this, the United States Geological Survey is actually wrapping up a detailed simulation of groundwater flow and nitrogen loading, which we are currently waiting to see publication of. Weston & Sampson has reached out to the USGS for a status update on that and for potential inclusion of those findings as part of this facilities plan. Thank you.
So just asking if anybody had any kind of thoughts or reactions or comments, we'd really love to hear them to incorporate them moving forward.
Yeah, if I can say, there may be people online who are on the WPCA. Jen, I'm not sure if you can see them there, who might want to make some comments. That would be Graham, Curtis, Mark Aaron, well, Peter Pastori, and Brogan, right? Those would be the other four, right, Trent?
Yeah, if you guys had something to say, maybe raise your hand, but I'd like to maybe get some feedback from the board first, maybe see if there's any questions.
Okay.
I guess I had one question, just looking at your little color chart initially. How do we compare relative to maybe some of the other shoreline towns? Or I don't know if you know that or not, but I mean, certainly the amount of red there is mildly concerning. And I'm just curious, is this similar to like a Clinton or a Guilford, or how do we compare?
It's similar but different, because this is very unique to each community. It does look like a lot of red, but that's because we try to really focus in on very tightly on your unique parts of your community for physical properties for septic compatibility. Because you look at the very last line, inland parcels is kind of the catch-all for all your other parcels in town, which grossly outweighs this these ones along the shoreline that either have small lot sizes or close to Long Island Sound, things like that. But if you think about, like, you look at similarities, yeah, you are in the same category when it comes to worrying about storm surge, or you're worrying about lot sizes is a typical, just a lot of small lot sizes along the shoreline. Everybody wants to be there. The critical habitat, natural diversity, that varies a little bit, but typically along the shoreline, they're more focused on the wildlife that basically lives in or around Long Island Sound and the salt marshes. So those are similar characteristics. And then I think different communities have different levels of tidal wetlands. And again, like your soil conditions, some parts of the shoreline are very rocky and bouldery and built on rock cliffs, and others have beautiful, well draining deep sand. So you can kind of see it is very broad, but there are similar themes overall.
Matt, just to build on that though, did you guys also look at, I'm noticing the categories to the left. Are these just the most impactful categories that you guys chose to show in the slide, or was things like, downtown center, was that included in the conversation?
And the thought with the downtown study area, or the downtown center, is that it would be its own category, but the rating on that would be so unique that really lends itself to a separate study. The downtown area is really more concerned with wastewater disposal capacity for economic development, and not necessarily protecting.
Okay.
I mean, it is protecting the environment, but that's almost like priority number 2 to making sure everybody has what they need for their businesses. And that particular aspect is something the state DEP doesn't fund with their grant funding.
Understood.
We have had discussions about how to approach that.
Yeah, that just to comment real quickly, it would be a separate study that we would look at, because it would be more in the considerations of economic development. So internally, we actually, you may recall, Scott, this was ways back, but we did allocate some ARPA funds.
Yeah.
To help fund that type of project. And we've actually started drafting what that would look like. We also discussed about maybe waiting until this was further along before we then go after specific areas. So there was no confusion in the public about what the purposes of the different studies were for. If I could, a couple of things that just popped off, is that, first of all, if a property owner has a property in one of the red zones, so to speak, and that's in the floodplain, they're required to follow. I mean, the FEMA standards now, I would assume, would be addressing all these issues that you're highlighting, right? So if any new system were to be installed in the floodplain zone, those standards exist now, right? The town wouldn't be creating a standard above what is currently being required by FEMA. Or if you could maybe talk a little bit about that. Are we looking at creating new regulations, or are we just looking at more notifying residents of the regulations as they exist now?
Well, we haven't really gone too far down the path of jointly developing recommendations for these areas yet. But in terms of like flooding, there are guidelines in even the state, the public health department code for septic systems for septic systems in low-lying areas that are prone to flooding. But DEP is looking more at a like macro level and saying, are there larger widespread neighborhood problems? It more becomes, the challenge with floodplains becomes more when you try to move forward with a neighborhood solution, because there's other factors that make septic system functionality difficult, and you kind of look at them together. So if that's the only problem in a neighborhood, then usually it's not insurmountable. But if you have a lot of flooding and it's chronic flooding, then it kind of becomes, well, maybe that's an indication you have shallow groundwater. And if your septic systems, maybe there's cesspools that are with wet wells that are 60 or 70 years old, maybe that's something you might want to look at more, in more detail. But if it's more modern systems that account for public health code standards today, then you say, no, those systems are generally probably okay. So that's kind of the next level of the analysis.
Okay.
So sort of along the lines of what Peggy asked, Trent, with the accumulation of and cataloging of all this information, do you foresee any big policy shifts or implications as a result of this data?
Was that for me, Bruce?
Yes.
Oh, so I think I mean, it's still premature to say. However, you know, if we could come up, I think Weston and Sampson will come up with recommendations on if it, like, for example, I'm not saying this would go this way, but these areas that are in red, I don't want to call them red properties, but that have the characteristics of red only on a range of 0 to 5, right? You know, there can be zoned a certain way, not zoning regulation, but zoned for septic. And, you know, those can be given classifications for if it's separation to groundwater, which is already enforced now. I mean, we are real conservative, as we are now, just knowing that over the past 6.5 years, it's rather than 18 inches like the public health code calls for, you know, the town has been more conservative. So if, you know, we do 24 inches from groundwater or mean high tide, whichever is restrictive. And it may, you know, they may recommend advanced treatment systems, as we call AT systems, right? I mean, there's a lot of different things that I think can be in a recommendation, but from a policy perspective, maybe there's other things that, you know, that they can recommend. Again, technical standards for subsurface sewage disposal was just revised this year to require just other technicalities with the installation of septic systems. So, I mean, this study may piggyback on other things like that. But I think it's still premature to say what is going to come out from this, but it's possible. It's possible. Nothing. We don't want anything that's going to alter property value, right? But we have to be cognizant of those low-lying areas, and I think we also want to protect the homeowner and our waterways from any potential, adverse events.
Well, it sounds like we have more to come, right? And I think the message today too is if, you know, you remember the public watching this and you think, oh, my house is in the red area. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have to do any kind of major changes right now. It just means that going forward, there might be different rules to follow if you are going to do some sort of upgrades or changes, but we don't know what those rules will be yet, right? So I think that's helpful. You mentioned that part of this plan is public outreach. How is that going to be conducted to reach out to people, particularly those who are in the areas of concern?
Yeah, we were really kind of bouncing around the idea over the next 4 to 6 weeks, set up a public participation session with the public and the WPCA, where we I hate to say this, but we sort of give this presentation again, but more slanted towards the public, and then ask them, you know, how are your systems working? Or, you know, you're going to have a group of people that we're going to come in and say, my system's great, but man, my neighbor's system releases all these odors in the spring, you know, and you have other people who are going to say, oh, our whole neighborhood's bad and I can't find anybody to do anything. Or you have another group of people say, oh, everything's great, and you take those thoughts kind of in aggregate, and then you kind of try to build a better picture of how the neighborhood areas are functioning.
Let me just jump in for a second. Peggy, unless you had a follow-up to that?
No.
Okay. A couple of questions, or a couple of answers to a few questions. Scott, you mentioned how do we compare to Clinton, Guilford? My own experience, which is rather anecdotal, but we don't have the same level of quote unquote problem areas that Clinton has. They're struggling with their own facility plan and looking at building community systems and things like that. I think Madison's shoreline is just a little bit less densely developed and a little bit less problematic, but there are similarities. I mean, the shoreline communities all have similarities in terms of impacting salt marsh, the sound, groundwater, etc. And another issue with regard to the zones that we said were more problematic than others, don't forget, Trent his department is already handling all those issues. There's no major failing of septic systems, there's no discharge of wastewater, there's no health issues, things like that. They are challenging, and most of the issues probably relate to people that want to add bedrooms and can't do it, or want to improve their property but can't find a place to put the septic system. Those kinds of quality of life issues are probably more recurrent in people's minds than compliance with the health code, because I think Trent has developed, he and Amanda have really, they understand what has to be done and are able to overcome those limitations right now. What we're looking at is the future. How does our plan address what happens in 10, 15, 20 years? The way to avoid problems is to plan in advance for those problems. So today, we don't have major issues, but where are we going to be in 20 years with, increased development, groundwater, sea level rise, all those other issues.
Good point, Tom.
And Peggy, your question about FEMA. FEMA really doesn't address the wastewater disposal part of development. That's handled under the public health code. And, it's kind of a very difficult situation if you say, well, FEMA says raise the house 10 feet, to be above inundation level. Well, where does the septic system go? That's still left hanging out there somewhere. But then again, the hurricane comes, maybe you get an inundation every 5 or 10 years or something. How important is that? And that's one of the things that we have to evaluate objectively and say, well, is a 5-year event flooding out a septic system a big enough event to warrant any kind of major changes to the health code? And with regard to a policy shift versus regulations, again, I don't want to repeat myself, but Trent already has a lot of expertise in this area and applies it. I think what we want to do is establish that there's empirical data, such as what Weston and Sampson has put together for us, which justifies adding more tools to Trent's toolbox, which, it's one thing to say you want to do something different with the septic systems, and it's another thing to demonstrate why it's practical and environmentally sound to do so. Once we establish that, if we have to have an overlying code for certain areas, this study will establish the basis for that. And of course, since the study is funded by DEP, since it's in the Clean Water Fund, and if we do require further recommendations and regulations and maybe expenditure of additional money to build septic systems, that would be fundable as well, once the state approves the plan. So we're going to be very, very careful about that. The plan is not going to be presented that is a financial hardship or a regulatory hardship for the town or for the residents. So that brings me to the last question about public participation. There are some homeowners groups out there. In fact, I did reach out to the Lee Manor group, which is down off of Neck Road. There may be people on this Zoom meeting from that homeowners association, but we're going to do more of that. We're going to get homeowners interested and get them to a meeting, maybe at the senior center or something like that, and solicit their input. As I say, most of the issues probably relate to people wanting to do more on their property that they can't unless they incorporate some changes to their septic system. And you know, that will give us real guidance on what we want to propose overall in the future. Thank you.
Any other board member questions? Okay, Al, yep.
Yeah, this is a fascinating slide on septic compatibility, and I really appreciate the effort that's gone in to prepare this. I'm a little concerned this slide inadvertently looks alarmist to me. And I wouldn't want this slide to be misunderstood by anybody. I think there needs to be some qualifying language on this slide itself as to what it means, and especially the future orientation. And I think the color choices are unnecessarily alarmist. I'm a little concerned when people see a whole bunch of red boxes that they're that they may get overwhelmed by the redness of those boxes and kind of get lost in the, oh my gosh, something's terribly wrong where I live. So just for presentation purposes, I am not questioning the data. I'm just questioning whether this presentation might be better qualified or toned down a bit so that it's not misunderstood by people who haven't had the benefit of listening to this presentation this morning.
Well, that was sort of the basis, Al, of my original question of comparability to other towns, and just, you know, that your first thing you see is the red on the screen, right? And so, typically in corporate presentations, I might suggest maybe some shading or something like that. So it's, moving towards yellow or moving towards red or moving towards green, but you get a sense of, is it really 0 or is it 1 or is it 1.5, or, you know what I mean? I got to think that it's not 0, 2.5, and 5.
Well, as you can see, you don't even need the colors really. It's a scoring system. It's a numeric system. So the colors aren't even necessary in the chart. So you're right.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I mentioned the 0 to 5. I mean, there's no room for orange or anything.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, in terms of the rating system, it is a very coarse rating, and then all that is to try to sort through these are actually pretty small areas compared to the entire town. But yeah, I could see what you're saying about the color. Absolutely. But
For
on the
public,
other
we can change
hand,
that.
what we're trying to do is get the public to look at. I mean,
Oh, they'll look at it.
we want the input. So, but I hear what you're saying. And you're probably right. Yeah.
Thanks, Scott. And Al, thank you guys for those comments.
Well, any other board member comments? So I want to thank you. I know this has been quite a big undertaking, and appreciate the update. And I know we'll be hearing more about your thoughts as you kind of do the next level of data analysis. So I think the takeaway is we're making progress. We're identifying areas of the town that need to have further review and discussion about, and we look forward to the next phase. And then also, please reach out to my office when you're ready to start that public dialogue process, because we can use a lot of different communication tools that the town has to reach out to residents. I don't know how targeted you want to be. Do you want to do broader type of educational opportunities? I think Zoom is a great tool because you'll get more attendance, of people, I think, through Zoom or hybrid. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and we can figure out to make sure you got the tools you need to get public input.
Sure. Thank you for offering that help.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. We look forward to the next update.
Thanks.
Thanks for
All right,
having us.
thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, guys.
Okay. So I think I will move on to item number 7, and I'm going to share my screen now, which is discuss status of the ARPA funds and related projects. Hold on one second. And I will do this. This is not what. All right. I tell you, no matter how much I use Zoom. What, are you seeing the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so, but it's a tiny, teeny, tiny thing on my screen. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it looks good for us. It's big.
Okay, hold on a second, because I've got like a little box. And I got into some weird mode during that presentation. Hold on. Why is it that I'm not seeing the whole thing?
Maybe if you hit slideshow.
Well, the problem is I'm not even seeing what's showing on the screen right now. I
Oh.
have 4 boxes. I'm in some weird viewed mode right
But
now. So
Peggy, stop sharing and then reshare.
yeah, I'm gonna have to redo it. Okay. So I don't know why it was doing that. So I will start sharing again. Do that. No.
The joys of technology.
All right. Is that good? You can see it?
Mhm.
Or no, you're seeing a memo now.
Now we're on a memo, yeah.
That's the memo. That is not. I see what's going on here. Give me 1 second. I have 2 screens and it's getting confused about what to show here. So,
You can drag it over maybe.
well, and then when I dragged it over, it was showing the second screen. So maybe I just turn off the second screen. Now it's really confused.
There we go. You're good.
Okay, now
That's good.
Now it's tiny. Now it's tiny again.
And we just lost it too.
I don't understand what's happening here. So yeah, one more. I'm gonna try one more thing. I've just never had this happen before. It's still showing as a screen 2. Okay, I am here. This is.
Could Jean share it?
Yeah, it keeps, I've got the other screen turned off, but it keeps offering it only.
It's
a
good
screen
now.
2.
Yeah.
Okay,
look-
but the problem is I can't see it. It's like a little teeny dot in my thing and I can't make it bigger. I don't.
It's
Hit
fine
print.
for us.
Hit print.
All right. I mean, okay, so I will talk about it, but I can't even see what I'm presenting. All right. So, all right. How's that? You guys can see it fine then.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, the first slide I've got up here is just basically what I showed at the town meeting. This is a status report on the ARPA funds. You know, we received 5.3 million. And it gives a breakdown of what we had approved as CIP projects, which was about 2.5 million. And this is what the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance had done. And then we had other kind of community projects we had approved. We gave over to the committee last year 1.9 million. And they basically funded almost the full 1.9 million. And they turned back to the town $29,603. So that was what was turned over from the committee back of what was left over from ARPA funds. Now, what we're realizing is there were a number of applications that had come in right around the time the committee, which had been in effect for a year basically, and we'd done a lot of promotion. There was kind of this flood of applications that came in at the last minute after they had already kind of decided to move forward and hand the funds back to the town. And so the board has to really respond to these applications. And so the process we had done before we had the committee was the Board of Selectmen, that would go to the Board of Finance. So I would recommend that, you know, rather than just saying we're no longer doing community applications, I think we should at our next meeting review each one of those and make a decision. And so there's about $603,000 of requests that have come in for different projects from the community. And it's just kind of interesting because, I think the committee had struggled to get people to apply throughout the whole year. And Al, you were on that committee. And then literally they said, we decided to prioritize some capital projects to help us out. And they turned the funds back over to the town, and then there was just this flood of applications. So I'd like to take these up at our next meeting to just make some decisions. I also will come back and also make the board aware of some other town CIP projects I think that would be helpful to use these funds for. So, so you were sent a memo of, basically reallocating some funds back in from ARPA. Some of this was related to projects where we just didn't spend everything that had been budgeted. So there was some leftovers. And then there is a project that we had originally put on the list, and that was the town Morrill Town Hall HVAC system. That was quite a large project at $525,000. I think after further review of that project and knowing the timing restraints that ARPA requires, you have to commit by 2024 and spend by 2026. We think there just are other priorities in town that we could use that money now. And I would just defer ARPA back into CIP or the Morrill Town Hall project back into CIP because there's a lot of planning initiatives with the new facilities committee that's going to happen to that part of town. So I'm recommending we move that money back into the ARPA funds. And then also the Madison Center project, which was, the ARPA committee actually was very supportive of. We'd gotten the grants for phase 3. We actually included in our application to the state that our matching funds would come from ARPA. They came back recently and said, you can't use ARPA funds for your matching component. They consider it federal funds, which they are, but they're kind of unique federal funds. They're not a typical grant. And the state said you can't use that money to fulfill the match requirement. So we're going to return that money back. And then later in the agenda, you'll see instead we will fund that project through a special appropriation instead. So a lot of moving parts, but if we take all the actions in the memo, that's going to leave $912,000. Plus there's an additional $29,000, which I talked about earlier, that was just left over when the committee finished its work. And that would leave us with a total balance of $941,641 to use for ARPA projects. So there are 2 other items on the agenda later. We'll get to those that I'm recommending we take out of those ARPA funds. That's the tennis court project, which has had some complications, so we need a little bit more money. And then the Madison downtown utility project. This is not the phase 3, which is the new phase. This is still trying to get those telephone poles down. And so you also received a packet of information on the cost overruns from that. And what the problem is, because we've had, the estimates on that project to complete it were done 3 years ago. There's a particularly inflationary impact for electrical wiring and things like that. So, so that's kind of, if we take these actions, if we agree to the recommendation in the memo, we will now have $941,000 to use for other projects, basically. So that's kind of the status of ARPA. And I don't know if we want to, let me just see if I did presentation mode, maybe that would, now I have a whole screen. That's, I don't know what's going on here. But anyway, so I guess for board discussion, because moving forward, you'll see I've got a series of motions, and that will involve using some of the funding and also reallocate, like releasing some of the funds back into ARPA. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sorry if I'm being a little, my mind is not thinking straight today. So if I can answer any more questions. And I know Stacy's on also. She's got like a whole spreadsheet tracking all this stuff. No? So we can maybe move on to the next items, which will really address the town-related projects, and then the bucket above, the 600,000 of requests. I think we handled that in another meeting. And then I can also highlight some other town projects we might prefer to prioritize over some of the community projects, but we can talk about that. So, okay, all right, then with that, I will move on to item number 8. I'll stop sharing again. I don't know what. And now I have a presentation frozen on my other screen. Just lots of fun today. All right, item number 8 is discuss and take action to approve the following appropriations related to ARPA funds. 1, return project balances totaling $912,038 to the ARPA fund. And then 2 is reallocate $100,000 of approved ARPA funds, round 10, for tennis court lighting to the tennis court construction project. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, great. Okay, and so basically what happened was on, just to talk about the tennis court, I think the once again, pricing just came up way higher than the original estimate. And the ARPA committee specifically had allocated $100,000 for lighting. They don't think they can do the lighting right now. It also has to go through, I think, planning and zoning. They're really eager to get this done now, to get the courts done this summer. And so recommendation is to take that $100,000 and apply it to the cost overrun for the project. So that explains the tennis court lighting. And I think they are going to explore some other options for lighting. A lot of communities are now looking at solar. So you don't even have to have like electrical installed and things like that. So maybe that's an option that could be added later to the courts, is putting in a solar driven system. So they're going to kind of look at some of those other options. With that, any other discussion?
So it's an interesting point, the cost overrun dilemma. Do we have any other ARPA approved projects that are in danger of cost overruns?
This was one of the more, actually, as you noticed, the memo highlights some where we actually had money left over, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
The playground was one. So some of them are coming in under budget. This project, we can invite Bill McMinn up if we want, because he's being told if we had done it a year ago, it would have been within budget. That's how aggressively these things have gone up. I'm not aware of any other ARPA. We're still in the middle of some of these, like, for example, the West Wharf bathroom situation. That was something we had awarded funds for. We've hit some roadblocks on that, doing what we originally wanted to do. And so now we're having to rethink the project. So there may be a need for more funding. And that's something where I think the next meeting, we can talk about that, have the list.
And that's what I'm getting at, is that as we consider what we're going to do with that new balance, maybe some of it is to set aside for pre-approved projects that are now experiencing an overrun, to make sure that they're properly funded. Yeah,
I think that's a great recommendation. And when we come back at the next meeting, we'll have all those projects and highlight ones where we're dicey on them, maybe. Right now, I just can't off the top of my head tell you what those are. So, but that'll be for next meeting. Absolutely, we'll have that list.
But is it also a point of maybe just a reminder to the teams too? I mean, the reality is, we need to stay to budgets also, and we need to stick to what was allocated, and just the importance of budget ownership and ticking and tying your dollars allocated to the project and making sure we're accounting for everything should be super important. So I guess I just don't want to minimize that.
I absolutely agree with you. I know even on the tennis court project, there was a lot of thinking of how to cut down the budget. And I think, Bill, actually they did, right? You did some re-engineering of it a little bit to get it down as much as you could. I think this one in particular, anything with the schools is a bit of a headache because you have a very limited window. of actually getting the project done. And because of the school system, the school calendar. And I think the time outweighed some of the cost factors here in the sense of getting it done. But at the same point, I know Bill pushed back hard on the bidders to try to get this more within the budget. I'm just looking at, because, Bill, I don't know if you want to weigh in, because he's the one.
I would
looking
love to.
at this stuff. Yes.
Because, I've been working for the town for many years, as you know, and I think that on time within budget has always been my focus. I think that's always been our philosophy. And unfortunately, well, I'm going to start with the positive. The Brown School project that we're doing this summer, the numbers came in, right on, so I was very happy about that. Very excited. The two projects that I just bid recently have not. And the project that we're going to bid soon is the town campus geothermal. I'm concerned about that. I think that we need to be. The changing times are interesting, and I think they're flowing and fluctuating. So I agree with on time within budget. On the tennis court, I tried to see where we could adjust and squeeze some money out of it and do it. We're giving up some stuff. But I think we have to also relook at the time we are in right now. Do we want to do the projects, or do we not want to do the projects? I have two today that I'd love to talk in detail. Maybe it's not the appropriate time. The tennis courts and the high school lighting project. So when you're ready, I'd like to talk about those, because I think we really need to evaluate those. Do we really want to do the project, or do we not want to do the project? And how much do we want to remove out of the budget? And is the project still satisfied? I've been here long enough to know that, the high school to me was a great project. They made some big sacrifices to get it on time within budget, and we're still feeling those sacrifices now. So it's a balancing act. I don't have the right decision. I have opinions, but I look for the board, the five of you, to tell me what direction you want me to do, because I can do, I just need time and money, and I could always make something work. Is it an acceptable project to everyone afterwards is the question.
And this motion that's on the table right now, it is basically, the return of funds, which we talked about. I'm sure you guys have the memo detailing that. And then the other thing is the reallocation of the 100,000. There's no way we could do this project with the budget we have and have lighting. That was kind of the final conclusion, right? So let's take the lighting money and make sure we at least get the courts done. So that's what the motion is here. So we're taking that 100K and adding it to the court construction part of the project, so we can at least get the courts done.
Which I support that. I think that's a good decision. And then we can talk about the project and, the funding afterwards, if you like.
Okay. Is that okay? Is everybody comfortable voting on this piece? And then we'll move on down the agenda. It's a little confusing. Maybe not structured the best here, but okay. All in favor of approving item number 8, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes. All right. Great. All right, so item number 9 is discuss and take action to approve the ARPA round 13 projects not to exceed $301,100 pending Board of Finance approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right, so this has got, and because I can't have my second screen up, I think this has the 2 projects on there. Does somebody have this handy? Because now I can't get my thing going here. In the packet, there's 2 projects on there, right? And I'm trying to remember if this included the tennis court, right? And then the downtown center project.
Yes.
Yeah, 301, right. Okay, so in addition to 100 from lighting to construction, we still need another 53,000 on top of that. So that's part of this. And then the other piece, the 248,000, has to do with the Madison Center project. And that is trying to just complete that utility project. We got back, so just at least on the Polson piece, as I said, the 53,000 is just so, it's really $153,000 that we're doing over what was originally anticipated for the cost of the construction of the courts. I don't think we have a choice on this, to be honest. It is what it is. Bill did try to work down the numbers more with the bidders, and I think you've kind of pretty much, I don't think there's anything extra we can cut out at this point, right? Bill, we cut the lighting out. We cut,
For all the amenities that we would like to have had, we really need to decide, do we want to move forward with the project or not? I mean, it's timing and money. I don't think if we rebid it out, I don't think we're going to get any other prices. We got 3, competitive prices. A local contractor was the low bidder, and he worked with us to try to, make it a little more palatable for us. So I think it's a tight time. I think if we rebid it, I don't see it changing in the near future. If you put it off a whole nother summer, who knows? I could never predict. But I think if you want to move forward, we have to go with what I'm recommending.
And I would just echo that this was one that the ARPA committee did really want to see happen. There was a lot, that was one of the reasons they took what was a CIP project and said, this is one we think is a community benefit. We want ARPA money to go to this. So we're just putting in a little bit more ARPA money than we had really anticipated. So are there any more questions on that piece? Okay. So we're good voting, and then the downtown center, any questions on that? I can have Rob explain. We are, unfortunately, you saw the detail. A lot of this is just infrastructure work that Eversource is claiming has to be done. We're trying to get them further down on the numbers. I'm hopeful that we will, because I was a little kind of taken aback when I saw their estimates come in. But I'd like to at least have the authority to go up to a certain amount, but I don't intend to spend this much on this. Any additional questions on that? Nope. All right, with that, then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, motion passes, thank you. And then item number 10 is discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation for Madison Center Project Phase 3 of $315,283 pending Board of Finance and Town Meeting approval.
So moved.
Moved. Second.
Okay, so this is basically now the Phase 3 grant, completing the streetscape improvements from the firehouse down to Route 79. We received 2 grants on this project in the fall, one for a transit-oriented development grant, and then another one for STEEP. But that there does require a matching. Our intention, as I said before, was to use ARPA funds for that. We now can't, so we would need to take this from the undesignated fund balance. And then I don't know if Stacy's on, but we certainly have capacity to do this out of our existing funds. We have almost $20 million in our fund balance. And so the recommendation is that we, use that fund for the matching component of this. So any further discussion or questions? No? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Thank you. And then item number 11 is discuss and take action to add to the call of the town meeting scheduled for February 27th, 2023 to approve the following. Item number 2, a special appropriation of $315,283 for Phase 3 of the Madison Center project.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, this is just scheduling the town meeting now because this is over $250,000 in terms of according to our town charter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, great. All right, so that'll go to town meeting. Item number 12, discuss and take action on bid award to Hinding Tennis for the high school tennis court replacement at Polson in the amount of $939,500 as approved through the ARPA funding approval process.
So moved.
So, second.
Okay, I'm just noticing one thing on here. We need Board of
Which one
Finance
is it?
approval, right? Before the funds are released, but that's going on the agenda for
Wednesday.
Wednesday, right? So So I'll just add to the motion pending Board of Finance approval. Okay, did I get a second?
Second. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe
Any further
I motioned it, I
discussion?
don't know.
Yeah. Any further discussion? Nope. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Get that done, Bill. So we just have to go to Board of Finance on Wednesday. Item number 13. Discuss and take action to accept the Facilities Office recommendation report and cost analysis for awarding a contract to remove and replace the stage lighting at Daniel Hand High School. This expenditure is funded through CIP.
So moved.
So I need to, okay, you moved it, okay, second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, Bill, this one came in kind of last minute, so I'm going to turn it over to Bill to explain. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. So this is one of those projects that, had a lot of input from all the users. Part of the emails that I sent you last night, and sorry for the delay, was, response to the use of I don't think I can articulate as well as the principal how much this facility is used. How, I've been to a couple of the concerts and they're just amazing, but the facility's 20 years old. We redid the sound system. The school uses it a lot for the students, presentations. I know they do their open, the beginning years when they do their opening of the school. It's a big facility and it's used a lot. So 20 years old, we redid the sound system. Now we're redoing the lights. There's some safety concerns and issues because they use it so much, and the dimming of the lights and the use of the stage. I reviewed the scope yesterday morning. It came in Friday. We reviewed it yesterday, looking at areas that we can reduce. And yeah, there is items that we could reduce, but I think those items are critical for the safety issues and the usability of it. And then there's one item that I think makes it, a spotlight that was sort of added at the end, but it's, relative to one or two things, I don't see us reducing the scope of this and still getting what we wanted. And I really believe it's the times. I did the proposal in 2018 and, things have changed, lighting, electrical, those are the hot topics of construction. And I think that those prices just went up. We have a really good contractor who's low bidder. We did have one other contractor that bid. I'm very comfortable with the contractor. I think the prices are reasonable based on today's reality. And I would like to move forward with the full amount and ask for the extra money because I think it's a worthy project to complete as planned. It will cost more money. It is a tight project. I'm very comfortable with the designer. We have a BL company and Dennis Burton, who's with BL companies. Their electrical engineer has been out there many times, met with the users. I'm very comfortable. The scope is good. And the contractor is a one that we've used before. And I know that he can get it done this summer. So with all those things, I am recommending that we do not reduce the scope and that we go forward with the full amount. I'm open for questions, happy to go through more details. And I know I sent you the stuff last night because we're trying to get it done this summer and I want to award it to get the stuff to order it. It's a short period of time to, get the project done. And it's even a shorter time to get stuff here. Oh, and the most important thing I want to say is happy Valentine's Day.
Back at you, Bill.
So I'm open for questions. I know I'm asking for a lot of money and I know it's a big deal, but I really think this project warrants it.
So, and I'm trying to pull, I'm still having technical issues here.
I can go over the numbers in my
yeah.
head. I can pull them up.
Why don't you pull it up? Because I just want everybody to understand there was a budget that was put together through CIP. The bids came in at a certain amount. This is going to require an appropriation. And the board would have to decide where that funding would come from.
Yeah, give me a second. So here's the plans. Did you want to see the plans and the lights and the information that we're doing? So this is the cafeteria. These are the lights and the structural stuff that we're going to put in. Let's see, is there any other information here? I don't really think there's much here to show you on this.
Well, so Bill, a question I have though is, because we
Sure.
just did this for the tennis courts. We said, okay, you know what? We can't do the lighting. We're going to economize. We're not going to put the lighting for the tennis courts. It's going to delay the project and it's going to cost more than what we have in the budget. Is there anything in this project that could be approached in that way? Is there any component that could be pulled out where you can say, hey, this was something we really wanted, but in order to stay as much in budget as possible, we're gonna have to pull this out of the project?
There was 3 things that we looked at. I talked to the contractor, and Colliers, Blair with Colliers is helping me review it. There's 3 items that we came up with Monday. One has to do with the house lights in the stage. And the other one has to do with the perimeter lighting for when the place is dark and people are walking in. And then the third one was the spotlights in the back. So those are the things that we thought we could take out. We didn't have numbers for them yesterday. But we thought we could, they were substantial, let's just say. And the stage lighting that are house lights are the original ones. They don't work very well. I've been in there in the dark. That's unacceptable to me. I don't want to even consider those. The perimeter lights that the principal keeps asking me for, he says, Bill, when the act comes on and they turn the lights off and the kids up there talking or dancing or whatever, we don't have any perimeter lights for when people come in and are trying to get seated if they come in late. Once again, I think those are things that weren't in the original plan that in my opinion, aren't negotiable. We need to put those in. And then the only other thing is in the back, there's the spotlight that they drag out and I think, set up in a very unsafe manner. So we talked about upgrading those and putting them up on a better pedestal and, improving the safety. So the only things we came up with, I thought were the most important to me, but not the most important to the lighting and the colors and all the stage lights. So they were facilities things that are important to me. So I don't want to compromise those. And I think that they're important to keep. So I did not come up with anything in this particular project that I thought was warranted to keep the project moving forward and get it done within time on budget. I just didn't think they warranted. So the short answer is no. Sorry it took me that long.
Okay.
Bill, I understand. You gave a very good explanation for the safety issues involved. What proportion of the monies are to cover the safety aspects of what you described?
So I didn't have time enough from yesterday morning. The contractor's still going to get back to me and they're still on the table. The place is safe. When I say safety, it's not unsafe. It just makes it safer. So and that's always my goal, is to improve the facility, make it better. So we do it safe. There's plenty of safety. We can get it done, but I like to improve. So I'm ballparking in the 50,000 range. I don't know. It's definitely in that. I would say anywhere on the low side to 30,000, on the high side to maybe 60 to 70,000. I don't know. We need to check those, but to me, they're not worth it. If you said I'm asking for
$120,000, right? That's
I got that one confused with the other one. $120,000. And if you said, well, we can give you 60, I'll make it work. I'll figure out what makes sense, but I'd rather do the thing correctly on this project. I'm asking for the money, but if you feel more comfortable giving me 60 or 70, I'll figure it out and I'll still make it safer and I'll still improve it. It won't be the design that someone put a lot of time and effort into it. And believe me, when I'm saying he put a lot of time and effort, and we have a lot of smart engineers working for us, but this particular engineer who spent a lot of time on the site, getting on the lift, going up, looking at the fixtures, checking the wiring. In my opinion, he spent double what I normally see people looking at it. So I know the design and the users have coordinated, and then he put in those safety issues at my request, or improvements. I'm going to clarify the improvements at my request that, let's just say made it another 60,000. So it's still over budget by say half. And I added facility improvements that won't really make the stage better. They'll make the facility better.
Is there like some money from the Board of Ed, like the facility improvements? Could that be handled through your plan of cycle maintenance, like adding the lighting, that kind of stuff?
So I'm happy to talk about that too, because, honestly, I talked to Dr. Cook yesterday. I haven't talked to the Board of Ed at all, and they control the funds as well as, my recommendations. And in today's world, we're tighter than we ever have been. Our utilities are tighter than they ever been, and our budgets are tighter than they ever been. The answer is we could take it from other projects that we have planned, and then we just have to agree on what's the priority. And, I'm happy to go over the priorities of what Bill McMinn thinks, but I need to talk to the Board of Ed and the superintendent before I can tell you that they will give up the other priorities for this priority. It's just not appropriate for me to do that at this point. So, they have
Okay.
it's just moving the money around.
Is there a rush for us to approve this today from a time sensitivity standpoint, Bill, or could those conversations ensue?
So the rush. So the answer is, if we wait a week, we could still do it. If we wait 2 weeks, probably. If we wait 3 or 4 weeks, forget the project. We're not doing it. You know what I mean? And so.
Well, you're going to do it, but you just can't get it done for the summer when the school's available.
Yes, clarification. We won't get it done this summer.
Right.
We can't wait. We can wait a week or two, but we can't wait 3 or 4 to get it done this summer. We need to order the parts and get it done. So
Okay.
I would request that you approve
I
what
think
you
this
feel
is
comfortable with.
Yeah,
And-
no,
and-
I just think that this is just to the spirit of, Scott raised earlier in the meeting that, there's a point where we, it's just, we're balancing a lot of projects, right? And
Yes.
we are going to be seeing a lot of cost overruns just because of the nature of the environment we're doing these projects. So we want to make sure that people are looking at them similar to like what you do with the tennis courts and saying something's got to give. We can't do it all. So let's pare down on this and make sure the core projects gets done. That's all. And I think that any project that we review going forward needs to be looked at with that scrutiny, because we are going to continue to have, I think, requests for things coming in over budget, right? Because a lot of this is CIP projects that were built up over the last 3 years prior to the inflationary. And we do, just so the public is aware, in our planning, we have an escalation always to account for inflation, but this is just unusual times. And what's also impacting is not just the cost, but it's the supply chain demand has put pressure on costs too. So it's frustrating, that's all. And so I guess it's just the question to the board is, if they're comfortable, if you guys are comfortable, you still want the project to be done as is, we then have to decide where we would want to take the funds from, and make obviously it would go under the Board of Finance. And that would be either we could use ARPA, because we do know we have a balance in there, or we can use fund balance.
So I'm comfortable moving the project forward as Billy is recommending. As far as the funding source go, I'm not sure it really matters whether it comes from the excess fund or ARPA. We're going to find plenty of uses. If this is more of a good fit for the ARPA, then we can go there, because we're limited in the nature of projects that we can assign to that. So I guess that if it fits well with the ARPA requirements, I would recommend ARPA to the Board of Finance.
Well, and Bruce, I think you raise a really good point per our budget workshops, in that we have that undesignated fund balance, and we should be pointing those towards, specific capital projects and, trying to leverage that money versus keeping it in a rainy day fund. So I think it's wise to move it forward as well. I think we've more than spec this thing out, very, very detailed with Billy and the Board of Ed. As a parent going through Daniel Hand High School, I can tell you right now, this is woefully needed. And especially if we're down the path of safety, I think it is very, very needed. So I fully support it, but I just want to make sure it's aligned with the Board of Ed.
I'm going to say almost the same thing that Bruce and Scott just said. I'm not opposed to this project. I do distinguish the tennis court project, which we just approved, because that benefits the entire community in a way, or at least the tennis and pickleball playing community, as well as the student community. This lighting issue to me, I'm not opposed to the lighting issue. It feels much more like a school board project to me and not a town project. It may be that as we search around for funds, as both Bruce and Scott have suggested, that the pot of money we're going to find is perhaps the ARPA funds. But I guess I'm interested to know if the school board thinks this is a really high priority. And if they do, I guess I'm not quite sure I understand why they haven't funded it themselves. And Bill, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to understand where this is in the priority ranking. And if it's that high a ranking, how come the the Board of Ed hasn't attended to it?
So
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is moving to us through the CIP, correct?
Yeah, this is a CIP project, Al. So yes, this was part of CIP. It just came in over budget, and so they're supportive of it. Yeah. No, this is a CIP project, and so I think it's been endorsed.
This is the process it goes to, because it's CIP. Right. It goes to the Board of Selectmen. In the past, we swapped it around, and I asked Stacy, should I take this to the Board of Ed and go through the Board of Ed process? And she said, no, it really needs to go through the Board of Selectmen. So it's the process it's going through. The board supports it. And, I know that they support it. I know what their funding situation is because I manage their budget for all their facilities. And I know that they're going to have to sacrifice some other projects. If I have to ask them for the 120, I don't know what they would do. And I don't know if they would sacrifice the other projects. They just don't have enough funding to do all the capital projects they need to do in the time frame. And I know that we're spending a lot of money on schools, but we always have. And I think we always need to continue. The building's 20 years old. We need to take care of it. And I've been doing this job a long time, and all the capital projects and all the facility management stuff has always been through the town and managed through the town building committees, because the school manages the educational processes, and the town has always funded and managed the infrastructure in the facilities in my past time.
So I think, Al, that hopefully that clarifies that, this has been endorsed by them. And I think it's just really, do we give them the extra money to fund the overage? Hold on one second. Oh, sorry. So anyway, so we can award the contract on this motion, and then we would have to open up the agenda to recommend to approve a special appropriation. Then I would argue we just do fund balance for this, because it is kind of in the schools. Although obviously they do a lot of community events, and it serves the community to see their shows and stuff. I would just recommend we do it out of fund balance and keep it simple. So with that, why don't we vote on the item number 13 as that motion, and then we can do the appropriation separate, if everybody's good with that.
Yep.
Okay, so all in favor of approving item number 13 as recommended by the Facilities Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great, thank you. And then I'd like to make a motion to open up the agenda to add item number 13A, which is to approve a special appropriation in the amount of $120,000 for the Daniel Hand stage lighting project.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, and with that, all in favor of the appropriation, say aye.
So just before we vote,
Yeah.
do we need to, or should we append to it, the adding it to an upcoming town meeting pending?
Well, it's 120,000. And I don't think he's
Threshold, right?
reached his 250 number yet. Bill, have
Okay.
you for the year? So
I think this is the first time I ever asked for any extra
Yeah.
money.
Okay.
for his
I
department.
just
Yep.
wanted to save us a future.
Yeah.
motion.
Yeah.
No, and this will obviously have to be approved at Board of Finance. So this will go on the agenda for Wednesday night. But so I think the motion would just be, and they ultimately decide where the money comes from, right? That's what their call is. But if they choose to decide to do ARPA, they would have to come back to us. But we're recommending just a special appropriation. So with that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. So so Bill, just make sure that gets on the agenda for the Board of Finance.
Yes,
And then you have what you need.
thank you very much for your approval. I think both projects are going to be very successful. We'll get them done this summer. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then I think, I don't know if you're also up for the next one. Item number 14, discuss and take action to accept a recommendation from the Academy Community Center Building Committee to hire an architectural and engineering services firm and awarding the contract to QA&M Architecture in the amount of $939,000 and to authorize the first select woman to sign all contracts and documents associated with this award.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. Al, I don't know, Bill, if you just want to say a few words, but they went through a whole,
Yeah,
public,
the building committee did an extensive review. Committee was very active. They interviewed firms. They had a very open and active conversation about which firm they selected. I thought it was a very good process from what I've seen in the past through other building committees. So I really think that they're doing their homework and doing their due diligence. I believe you have a great committee there, and they selected a great firm. I was involved, but I wasn't part of the selection. I was involved in the review and the interviews. So I think they're doing a great job, and I highly recommend you approve their request.
It was a very thorough process, and the final vote was unanimous. It's a unanimous recommendation.
That's helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Al, for that. It was.
okay. So with that, no further questions. All in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes unanimously. So now we have an architect for Academy moving forward, which is great. Okay, item number 15, and I think this would be good to have John Anako come up. Discuss and take action to award the proposal for coastal engineering services to SLR International for the Garvin Point Improvement Project in the amount of $147,290 with an alternate for construction phase services to be billed at an hourly rate with an estimated cost of $58,760 and to authorize the first select woman to sign all contracts and documents associated with the award.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. So I think if John Anako could walk us through kind of where we are in this project. This is obviously high profile project at Garvin Point. This is also a grant funded project that we received last year, $700,000 from the state. Plus we have a lot in CIP writing on this. So hopefully this will stay within budget. Okay, John, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Yep. So the Board of Selectmen approved SLR International to out of a quality-based selection process out of 3 different firms to select SLR to write a proposal for the engineering and environmental permitting for the Garvin Point Improvement Project. And So SLR did their proposal and it has been reviewed by members of staff and members from the Coastal Resiliency Commission. And the amount for the engineering services is $147,290. So based on their proposal and the review, we do recommend SLR for engineering services. They also provided an estimate for construction phase services, which would be overseeing the project and you know, assuring quality control during construction. And that would be done on an hourly basis, basically as needed, you know, during key components of the construction. And the estimate for that is $58,760. The project has funded through CIP, $750,000 in CIP. And there was also a state bond commissioned grant of $770,000. So so there's a funding amount of 1.5 million. An estimate for the project was very preliminary based on you know, a typical cross section for the seawall improvements was done, and the estimate for the project is 1.4 million. So we believe it'll, you know, it can be constructed for the budgeted amount.
John, just for clarity, maybe for myself and maybe for the public as well, if they're listening, I'm just curious. So the portion that we're voting on today is just the portion that the town needs to pay for that's not covered by grants?
The portion, now you're voting on the proposal, accepting the proposal for engineering services. The grant would cover engineering and construction.
Got it. Okay. So this is just engineering services, the upfront design kind of piece.
He's correct. Yes.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
I know that there's a lot of concern about ultimately what's going to happen down there, right? Because there was different options. Some of them might lose some of the real estate by the flagpole. And so we're not voting on a final design right now, right? That would be later when we actually award the contract. People are going to come back with design proposals and construction costs. My understanding, this was going to be being done in the fall. Is that we're still on schedule for that?
I believe so, and I'll, you know, I need to confirm that with the engineer whether they think that's still realistic. But that's still the goal here.
Yeah, I think that is something that we're still targeting. So I would encourage this to get moving as quickly as possible because it's kind of long overdue, and I feel like we're sitting duck for storms without getting this moving forward. So any other questions from the board on this? Nope. Okay, great. With that, then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, and then John, you're up here for another item, which is item number 16. Discuss and take action to approve the disposition of 6 highway vehicles no longer in service by Absolute Auctions and Realty per the disposition of town property policy. Any motion? Second?
Sure.
Second.
Okay, great. Okay, so with this is just unloading we've been replacing our vehicles and we had some other kind of unneeded vehicles that we just want to clear out the garage at this point. Any questions? Nope. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Item number 17, discuss and take action to approve using Childscapes on state contract for the replacement of the Surf Club playground as approved through the ARPA funding approval process.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and I don't know if I think Austin's here, but this was ARPA funded to replace the playground. One of those projects, Bruce, as you said, actually came in a little bit under budget. So we had some leftover money that we're hoping to give back once it gets completed. And I don't know if there's any additional questions. Does anybody need Austin to come up? It looks like it'll be great. I guess my one question, Austin, then since you're here, is timing. Is this going to get moving before the summer, you think? We can't hear you.
Mute.
Sorry. Yeah, no, the plan is, it's about a 6-week process to get the product made. So if it's approved today, we sign the contract and move forward, and it'll be up and going prior to Memorial Day, and kids will be on the playground before that.
Okay, great. All right, excited for that. And we'll put out some more public information to let the public know that this is when it's going to start and be closed down and stuff. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, great. And it's an exciting project. I think everybody's going to be happy with that. Before we move on, Stacy came in and said, we should add this to the town meeting, the lighting project, because of, if you look at it from a school standpoint, there's a couple of other projects, I think, that might have fallen under Bill's domain. So she said as a precautionary measure. So what I would like to do is I'd like to make a motion to open up the agenda to add item number 3 to the call of the town meeting scheduled for February 27th, 2023, to approve a special appropriation in the amount of $120,000 for the Daniel Hand Lighting Project.
So
just
moved.
want to open, okay, second. Okay, this is just to open the agenda up. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now I'd like to make a motion to add to the call of the town meeting as I just read, for that's scheduled for February 27th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, we'll get the verbiage cleared up a little bit better, but luckily we have one scheduled. She thinks it's just best, check the box, send it through, because it all depends on what department you put this under, so. All right, so with that, thank you very much for that. And now we can move on to item number 18. Bruce, I know you have an update, your committee met, and so we can talk about where we're going.
Yeah.
On this.
So recently the ad hoc committee met and has made 2 recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. The first was to recommend to this board that an ordinance be created banning all commercial marijuana activities in Madison. So that would cover the retail, the growing, anything related to the manufacture and sale of marijuana. It further went on to recommend that the question to create an ordinance in the banning it be put on to the referendum at budget time. So in talking with town council, the recommendation is that we create an ordinance and have the approval of that ordinance be the question. I think what's interesting about the discussion and the votes, the committee was unanimous in recommending it to a townwide vote. The thinking was that there is a spectrum of opinion on this, and the voting of the committee actually fairly represented the correspondence that we've received over the last 7-8 months, both in favor of and against having commercial activities in Madison. And the committee felt that the legislative body should speak up on this topic because the community was not clearly of a single mind on it.
I guess the question is, my understanding is you really haven't had like a lot of public feedback on this, right? Because I know the hearing was not well attended, and I just wonder, has this really been, I feel like it's been kind of silence from the overall public.
So we've received Not a lot, but we've received correspondence at a pretty regular rate. And the correspondence has been diverse in its opinion. So have we had a lot of public input? No, I don't think we've had less than we have with other topics. I'm a little surprised, given the amount of conversation that happened before the state took action to legalize it. I'm a little surprised that there's been so little community conversation about it subsequent to that. I don't know.
I
Sorry.
was gonna say, are other towns using the referendum as the way to settle this topic? I mean,
So the answer is the towns are availing themselves of a bunch of different pathways, including a townwide vote. I'd say by far the most common is a straight ordinance process, which doesn't require anything more than a public hearing. What I've observed is that the towns that have gone planning and zoning or just public hearing have created public outcry on the back end of that process. So the attempts, the good faith attempts at public hearings, either through planning and zoning or through ordinance process, hasn't awakened the community. It's the final action that finally gets those people who have an opinion on it to come up and speak. And that, in my opinion, is after the horse is out of the barn. So I'm not sure that just going through the public hearing process would adequately discern the mood of the community. We are not obligated to take this to a referendum question. There is no part of the process that requires it. However, we have the discretion to add the question onto the budget referendum. So it's really our choice and in our discretion.
Bruce, just, if in fact this moves towards a referendum question post creating the ordinance, yeah, I'm just curious, was there discussion amongst the committee about, a bit more education of the public, whether it's more public hearings or communications being sent out? I just worry that, a random question on the referendum, people will be coming in fairly uninformed.
So I think that what we would have to do as next steps is create the ordinance. And we have to choose. Are we going to create the ordinance in alignment with what the committee recommended, or are we going to go in a different direction? But create that ordinance, have the at least one public hearing where the community can react to the document before the referendum question, if we decide to go that way.
Yeah.
So yes, but I don't think at this point the conversation is advanced just by hearing people talk about their personal thoughts on marijuana. I think that we need to give the public a document to react to. And just so you know, we can also choose to do nothing. The consequence of that decision is that marijuana related businesses are treated in the eyes of planning and zoning as any other legal business entity, right? So they wouldn't be able to make the distinction between a marijuana facing business and, say, a bookstore, right? They would be viewed from a planning approval process exactly the same, and that's dictated by state statute. So I do believe that it is in our best interest to create regulation around this specific industry rather than let it be lumped in with everything else.
I'm comfortable with the ordinance component of this, and having the discussion to create the ordinance. I guess I wonder though, do we consider decoupling this, the two recommendations? One is let's create the ordinance and get comfortable around that. And then maybe we get, I don't know if it's, input from town council as to whether or not, we need to go down the path of a public vote.
So I asked Carrie this question specifically, and her answer was, I think appropriately, whether or not we take it to a town vote is a process and policy decision of the board, that there is no legal opinion
way or
that
the
she
other.
can render on that. Right.
Yeah,
Her opinion was craft the ordinance and make that the question, do we approve the ordinance at a referendum or not? So.
Yeah, I guess a couple thoughts. I mean, first of all, through planning and zoning, we have regulations around dispensaries, medical dispensary, right? Marijuana medical dispensaries. So, and that was all handled through planning and zoning. So I don't think the board did anything from an ordinance standpoint, right? So, and so I guess I'm a little still confused about, that was the approach that was taken a few years ago. Where we allowed it, but it was very strict controls about, or no, we banned it completely, right? I don't think we allowed medical dispensaries.
So we do. We
do. Yeah, that's right. So yeah.
We do.
So, and we
With-
had
with
very
restrictions, right? There are conditions on it.
right. And so, so there was very with restrictions on it, and that was done through zoning. What you're talking about is literally just commercial, non-medical use, right? And it would be a broad brush saying that we do not allow any kind of commercial activities related to marijuana in the town of Madison, period, right?
Right.
Which is a much broader, so it has nothing to do with where it's located or any of that. It would just completely eliminate it. And so is licensing for these types of facilities a state license?
Yes.
Or is it a town license?
So, well, it is a state license that enables a business to come into town and to work with the town within the construct of planning and zoning and ordinances to install an operation in Madison, so or in the town. So an unlicensed business couldn't come to us with an application. They would have to be licensed.
And
importantly,
and we can tax too, right? So I'm just saying
we're allowed to tax 3%.
3%. Okay.
Right. So it would have to be an extraordinarily large dollar amount in sales for it to really move the needle on a revenue perspective. Right. My personal opinion is that any revenues that we were to get in, I don't think would offset the increased infrastructure costs that we would need to have and around in public safety. So I think the first question for us to consider is, do we want to accept the recommendation on banning? Right? These are recommendations, they're not binding. Do we agree as a board that not having retail operations in Madison is the right way to go?
Well, it's not just retail, it's also growing, you said too.
So yes, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. So it's any kind of activities related to commercial sale of marijuana, right?
Right.
So,
and we obviously would need to tighten that up. And an ordinance would need to put some real firm definition around what that means. But the spirit is the growing storage and retail sales.
Okay. It obviously, this will be on the agenda item in terms of a formal process. I guess we would formally vote on approving to draft an ordinance, and then we would.
I don't know if we need to
vote to
approve the drafting of an ordinance,
but we need consensus because.
But we need consensus, right? Yeah. And to Scott's point about the public input and the timeline, we're against the clock for getting the question on the ballot, and that is, I think, for working purposes, we should consider that the end of March.
So do we have to go on the May ballot though? Can't this just go on in November? which is a better representation, I think, of the public, because as you know, our budget referendums get 8% turnout, whereas November tends to get at least half the town. So you get a better cross-section, I think, of the community.
Right, I would need Aaron to weigh in on this specifically, but the planning and zoning action expires at the end of the fiscal year, I believe. And
or no?
and I don't know if they can renew it or not.
Well, we could though we could put a moratorium as a board pending, we're approving this ordinance, right? So we're saying, but it's a moratorium pending, I mean, we can get the legal, if we need to go there. I'm just saying though, I don't think we want to put forward something that A, is not airtight, and B, on a time of year that we tend to get very little public focus. And I feel like November, people will come in very educated on this topic because there's going to be more attention paid in November versus May. That's all. But that's a discussion I think we could have later, seeing how the ordinance development goes.
Is there any, I'm thinking out loud here, but is there any worry or concern about precedent being set with, sort of cherry picking, one ordinance to send to, public via referendum vote and others not? I mean, in theory, we're elected by the public to create ordinances and to create policy. So I guess I just want to make sure we really think through that, and maybe there's guidance from Carrie, but I'm not suggesting that we usurp the public, but at the end of the day, that's sort of why we're elected. So,
well, we have other topics that we've been getting significant public input on, that we would not be taking these things to referendum. I think it's a fair point. On the other side of this, I would say this is a complex state thing that came out, where we're required to take action in some form. Right. Other things aren't. This is like, we have to do something on this because there's timelines that the state, well, I mean, I guess we don't have to, according to what you're telling us, but we have a little bit more of a, I don't know, a public, and we have to somehow take some sort of action, I think, the board on this issue.
I'd like to weigh in here. I very much like the recommendation from Bruce's committee that we move ahead with an ordinance. But the bigger policy question to me is the one Scott just raised, and that is, as marvelous as our town meeting form of government is, does this issue rise to the level of justifying a referendum question? If we look back in our history, I am hard pressed to come up with a similar kind of proposal that actually went to referendum. And I'm all too aware of how in some other parts of the United States, especially California, that sometimes the voters are faced with 15 referenda questions at one time when they go to vote. And so I think we as a Board of Selectmen need to deliberately ask ourselves whether this particular topic rises to the level of what we use to historically qualify a question for referendum. I'm not yet arguing either way, but I think that is the bigger question. And so to my way of thinking, the recommendation to create an ordinance sounds very good to me. The notion of having to, or for us to authorize it going to referendum is a question that I think requires a lot more discussion on our part. Because I do think it can set a precedent, and every time a group might feel they're not going to get what they want, or that the existing process for approving things isn't to their satisfaction, then we would be really opening the door for a lot of referenda questions.
I think it's all worthy of thinking about. I think that it sounds like we're all in alignment that we will move forward with the drafting of a restrictive ordinance, basically, or ban. This is essentially a ban, right, for the town. Mm-hmm. And then I think to be continued about the approval process for that. And if we do take it to the next level, I think those are all good thoughts, Al, because it does, you know, we've had a lot of controversial issues come to the board lately. And, you know, what rises to the occasion of a referendum. For, you know, I know we talked like Island Avenue, we took to a referendum question, but that was in replacing the town meeting. Our charter wants the town to weigh in on those issues, right? So instead of just the town meeting, we moved it to referendum. This is a little different than that because it's our role to pass ordinances. So I think those are all great thoughts, and we can talk more about it. And I think I appreciate the committee and Bruce, you're bringing this forward, and we'll debate it. And you know, and if we decide to go down that path, that we can make it happen, you know, for May, then we make it happen. If it has to be deferred later, we can defer it. So so when you spoke to Carrie though, is so should I just instruct her then to say the board would like her to start drafting that ordinance?
Yeah, I think so. I think she's probably going to
Okay.
want to circle back and have some conversations to be able
Yep.
to put in the appropriate language, but she
Okay.
certainly said that she would be in a position to do that.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, great. All right, so we'll move this forward and see where we land on this. Item number 19 is
Peggy, there was
Oh, yep.
someone who wanted to make a comment from the community, or should they wait till citizen comments?
they should wait till citizens comments. We'll do that at the end.
Okay, thank you.
We have item number 19 is discuss Board of Selectmen liaison assignments. I know we kind of passed around an email. I just want to confirm that I think Jen will be taking over our former colleagues' liaison assignments. No one indicated they wanted to do some swapping. And then she also raised her hand to do affordable housing. So I wanted to put that on the table because we now have that committee. It seems like a good fit, especially since you're planning and zoning as well,
Yeah.
and senior commission. So it's a good fit.
Yeah, it's great.
So I just wanted to confirm that, and just see if there was any other changes or requests that people wanted to make. No? Okay, great. So we're all settled on the liaison assignments. Thank you. And thank you for volunteering for that, Jen. And then I guess we'll move on to citizens' comments. If we have a hand raised.
We do.
Okay, great. Yep. All right, so you're moving them up?
I have done so. I don't know where they went. This is
He
Fran
probably hit the
Brady.
wrong button.
No, I did not.
Okay,
No, I wonder if he did.
No, as soon as, there he goes.
yep,
Hi, sorry, guys, took a while there.
yep.
Oh, good.
First of all, I apologize in advance. My name is Fred Brady. I live at 108 Genesee Lane in North Madison. I first want to apologize in advance if this topic has already been discussed by you, but I'm not sure. As some people know, the state has been collecting a 5-cent surcharge on the sale of every nip liquor bottle sold in the state. Then every 6 months, the state sends this money back to the towns in a direct proportion to the sales that the town liquor stores sell it. So in the last 12 months, Madison has received $9,425. Guilford, with whom we share the transfer station with, has received $9,108. I would like to know which town agency, committee, or other entity is responsible for using these funds in the manner as dictated by the state legislation. I would propose that if not already established, that these funds be managed by the town's solid waste disposal committee, or as is being done in Guilford under the banner of Sustainable Madison. Examples of how this could be, these funds could be used is in the support of communications, marketing, and for programs such as your food scrap pilot program. You could have used that to broadcast to make sure it's more effective and works, or recycling initiatives, transfer station needs, etc. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. We have not formally made any decisions about that. We haven't had internal conversations about where to have that happen. So I appreciate your suggestions, and we'll get back with some recommendations on that.
In full transparency, I'm on the solid waste disposal committee.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. But that's helpful guidance. I know we've talked a number of times internally. It's just been lower on the list. It hasn't been spent. It's still sitting there. We just haven't figured out yet how we're going to start using it going forward. So I'll come back with some recommendations on that.
Perfect.
Any other hands raised? Citizens' comments?
No, there are not.
Okay, well, with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Hello.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Thank you and have a great
Aye.
Valentine's Day, folks.
Great.
Bye, everybody.
Glad we
See ya.
didn't have a night meeting tonight.
Yeah,
So,
we'd be all in the doghouse.
yeah.
See ya. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.